This is Law of Attraction Explored. I'm Tim Grimes. If you'd like a free guide that explains the hidden link between relaxation and the law of attraction, or if you want more information about my books or my coaching, you can visit radicalcounselor.com. Enjoy the episode. Picking up where we left off, that reality is hypnotic. Reality is hypnotic. That what you think and believe and buy into then becomes your reality in some significant way. This is a basic and fundamental concept in the law of attraction. The exact wording or description of it is far less important than the idea that underlies it. And there are 1,000 different ways to describe the idea. A lot of this podcast is exploring different ways to describe the idea and get at the idea so we can understand and implement it better. And a good way to understand it is with this idea, with this approach, with this recognition that reality is hypnotic. Again, you're not just hypnotized when you go to a hypnotist. We're hypnotized by everything. We take in various stimuli, and how we buy into them, how we choose to respond and react to them, then shapes our life. You don't have to be a huge proponent in the law of attraction to still, believe in this concept. And again, I'm not here to tell you it's true or not true as much as I'm here to tell you to test it out for yourself and see. One of the things that we see when we test it out, at least for most of us, is the amount of fear that we buy into in our day-to-day life. The amount of lack that is presented to us and that we decide to buy into instead of buying into the prosperity and abundance that is also presented to us every day. We often decide to look at things from a more negative and lackful perspective as opposed to a life-giving, fulfilling perspective. And that's the radical choice we can make. Most people look at things from a rather lackful perspective. And the radical choice we can make is to look at things from a more fulfilling perspective. One where things already are okay on some deep level right now. And where goodness is all around you, and we recognize this goodness. What is an easy way to do that? Simply to relax into the now. And the way to make it more fulfilling for us, to fill up our lives with joy, to fill up our lives with the joy of the present, which is right now, the goodness that is inherent in right now. The way to do that is to face our fears more openly, and to, dare I say it, relax into our fears and recognize that they are not real in the way that we think they are real. I'd like to read to you a brief excerpt from The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. Most of you have probably heard of it. It's one of the more famous law of attraction books of the last century. It's a classic, and in my opinion, it's maybe the best introduction to this concept for most people. Because Murphy, first of all, was a great teacher, but he also struck a wonderful balance between being incredibly practical and also being deeply spiritual. He uses practical psychological language primarily. And there's some more spiritual sounding religious language as well, but the balance is just so beautiful and so instructive that it is the kind of book that you can read and ponder and meditate over again and again. So I thought I would read an excerpt from it. This is talking about how the subconscious mind can remove fear. In The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, Murphy discusses fear at length. And if you have not looked at this book recently, I would recommend doing so. So this particular section, titled Examine Your Fears. The president of a large organization told me that when he was a salesman, he used to walk around the block 5 or 6 times before he called on a customer. The sales manager came along one day and said to him, "Don't be afraid of the boogeyman behind the door. There is no boogeyman. It is a false belief." The manager told him that whenever he looked at his own fears, he stared them in the face and stood up to them, looking them straight in the eye. Then they faded and shrank into insignificance. This is exactly what we're talking about. This is a sound approach to dealing with fear. We have all these fearful beliefs, all these anxious feelings and uncomfortable thoughts that we buy into and play into each and every day, pretty much, for most of us. And what we can start to do is look at them. Don't be afraid of the boogeyman behind the door. Don't be afraid of the fear. There is no boogeyman. The fear is not real the way that you imagine it is. It is a false belief that you have bought into. Look at fear openly. Stare it in the face. Look it straight in the eye. And your body and mind might feel very uncomfortable when you do that. And that's okay. Relax into that. Because if you keep on looking it in the eye, if you look at your fear in the eye, that level of anxiety or stress will not remain there if you relax into it and keep on looking. That fear that you feel, when you look at it, examine it in this present moment now, will start to shrink in significance. It might not always happen right away, but reality is hypnotic. And when you relax into the moment, when you relax into now, when you choose to not take as lackful a perspective and a more fulfilling perspective, you can look at your fear, at these beliefs, and you can look at them in a new, more fulfilling way than before. An enlightened way. A different light than before. And that light is shining from knowing that it's okay. Right now is good. I can look at my fear. I can stare it in the face. And even if my body trembles, even if I feel physically terrible, even if my thoughts are scared, this is this, and this is now, and this is perfection. And your fear can't compete with that. If we look at it openly, we transcend it. Your reality is hypnotic.